The sky burned orange as Jake's fighter ship spiraled toward the alien planet below. Alarms screamed in the cockpit, red lights flashing wildly. He gripped the controls, muscles straining, but it was no use. The raiders had hit him hard, and his ship was done for. A sharp pain shot through his leg, a cramp locking his calf tight from hours of tense flying. He cursed under his breath, fighting to steer the wreck toward a soft landing. The ground rushed up fast, a blur of purple trees and rocky hills. With a bone-rattling crash, the ship slammed into the dirt, and everything went black. When Jake opened his eyes, the world was quiet. Too quiet. His head throbbed, and that cramp in his leg still gnawed at him. He pushed himself up, wincing as he climbed out of the cockpit. Smoke rose from the twisted metal of his ship, a small fighter he'd nicknamed Starbolt. He was a pilot for the Earth Coalition, tasked with patrolling the outer sectors. But those raiders, nasty pirates in patched-up ships, had ambushed him. Now he was stranded, alone, on some unknown rock in space. The air smelled strange, sweet and thick, like flowers mixed with engine oil. Jake scanned the horizon. Purple trees swayed in a gentle wind, their leaves glowing faintly. He limped forward, favoring his cramped leg, when he heard a rustling behind him. Instinct kicked in. He spun around, hand on the blaster at his hip, only to freeze at what he saw. A figure stepped from the trees, tall and graceful, with skin like polished emerald. She had 4 arms. 4, each moving smoothly, holding different tools. A glowing orb, a bundle of herbs, a metal rod, and a cloth. Her eyes, big and gold, locked onto his. Jake's jaw dropped. He'd seen aliens before, but none like this. She wore a flowing robe that shimmered in the light, and her face held a calm that made him feel oddly safe. "You're hurt," she said, her voice soft but clear, carried perfectly by some unseen translator. She stepped closer, and Jake tightened his grip on his blaster. "Stay back," he warned, though his leg buckled under him. "Who are you?" "I'm Kalia," she replied, unfazed. "A healer of the Vorn. You crashed here, and you need help. That's all I want to do. Help." Jake hesitated. The Vorn. He'd never heard of them. But the pain in his leg was screaming now, and his head spun from the crash. He lowered his blaster, just a little. "Fine, but no funny business." Kalia smiled, a small curve of her lips, and motioned for him to sit on a nearby rock. He obeyed, grunting as he settled. She knelt beside him, her 4 arms moving in a dance of motion. One hand pressed the glowing orb to his forehead, sending a cool wave through him. Another rubbed the herbs into his cramped leg, easing the knot almost instantly. The third held the rod, scanning his body with a faint hum, while the fourth wiped dirt from his face with the cloth. It was weird, sure, but it worked. Jake felt the tension melt away. "How do you do that?" he asked, amazed. 4 arms. It's like you're everywhere at once." Kalia's gold eyes sparkled. "We Vorn are born this way. Each arm has its own task, its own mind almost. It's how we heal, build, live. What about you? Only 2 arms, yet you fly through the stars." Jake chuckled, warming to her curiosity. "Yeah, us humans get by. I'm Jake, by the way. Pilot. Was chasing off some raiders when they clipped me. Guess I didn't win that fight." "You survived," Kalia said, her tone firm. "That's a win to me." She finished her work, the cramp gone, his head clearer. "Your ship's broken, but you're not. Tell me about these raiders." Jake leaned back, studying her. She didn't seem like a threat, more like someone who genuinely cared. "They're scavengers. Hit ships, steal tech, vanish. I was on patrol, and they jumped me. Don't know why they're out here, though. This place doesn't look like much." Kalia's expression darkened. "This is Torah, my home. We Vorn keep it hidden. We don't fight, don't trade much. But lately, ships have come. Crashing, scavenging. Something's drawing them." Before Jake could ask more, A low rumble shook the ground. Kalia's forearms froze, her eyes darting to the sky. Jake followed her gaze. Dark shapes broke through the clouds. Raider ships, 3 of them, engines roaring. Dust kicked up as they descended, heading straight for the crash site. "Friends of yours?" Kalia asked, standing quickly. "Not even close," Jake growled, grabbing his blaster. "We need to move." Kalia nodded, gathering her tools with lightning speed. "Follow me. I know a place to hide." She took off toward the trees, her forearms swinging in perfect rhythm. Jake limped after her, adrenaline pumping. He didn't know this planet, didn't know her people, but one thing was clear: those raiders weren't here for a friendly chat. And whatever happened next, he'd need Kalia and her 4 amazing arms to survive. As they vanished into the glowing forest, Jake's mind raced. What were the raiders after? Why was Kalia so calm about all this? And how had a simple muscle cramp landed him in the middle of something so wild? One thing was for sure: this was just the beginning. Jake's boots pounded the soft, glowing soil of Taurus forest as he followed Kalia deeper into the purple trees. The roar of raider ships overhead grew louder, their engines shaking the leaves. His leg felt better thanks to Kalia's quick healing, but his heart raced. Those raiders weren't just here for his wrecked starbolt. They wanted something bigger. Kalia moved fast, her 4 arms swaying like a dancer's, guiding them through the twisting paths. Jake couldn't help but admire her. 4 arms or not, she was tough, calm, and sharp. "We're close," Kalia whispered, glancing back at him. Her gold eyes caught the faint glow of the trees, making them shine. "There's a cave ahead. Old Vorn hiding spot. They won't find us there." Jake nodded, gripping his blaster tighter. "Good, but they'll search the crash site first. We've got time to figure this out. What do they want? You said ships have been coming here lately." Kalia slowed, her 4 hands busy, one brushing aside a glowing vine, another clutching her glowing orb, a third holding the metal scanner, and the 4th resting near a small dagger at her hip. "I don't know exactly," she admitted. "We Vorn avoid trouble. We heal. We grow. We live quietly. But something's changed. These raiders, they're not just scavenging. They're hunting." "Hunting," Jake repeated, his pilot instincts kicking in. "That's not random. They're after something specific. Maybe on your planet. Ever seen anything weird? Strange tech, hidden stuff?" Kalia hesitated, then shook her head. "Nothing I can think of. Taurus peaceful. Just us and a land." But her voice wavered, like she wasn't sure. Jake filed that away. He'd ask again later. The cave loomed ahead, a dark mouth in a rocky hill, half hidden by glowing moss. Kalia slipped inside, and Jake followed. The air was cool, damp, and smelled of earth. She set her orb down, its light spreading soft blue across the walls. Jake crouched, catching his breath, and peeked out. Through the trees, he saw the raiders landing near his ship, 5 of them, armored and carrying heavy gear. They'd moved with purpose, tearing into the starbolt's hull. "They're stripping it," Jake muttered. "But they're not stopping there. Look, they're scanning the ground." Kalia joined him, her scanner humming in one hand. "They've got tech I don't recognize. Not just for salvage. It's like they're mapping something." Jake's mind raced. He'd fought raiders before. They were greedy, not organized like this. "We can't let them get comfortable. I've got an idea. Can you get me back to the ship?" Kalia's eyes widened. "Back? They'll see you." "Not if we're smart," Jake grinned, the kind of grin he wore before pulling off a crazy stunt in the cockpit. "I've got stuff in the starbolt. Tools, power cells, a sonic emitter. We can rig a trap. You know this place, right? Help me set it up." Kalia stared at him, then smiled. A real one this time. "You humans are wild. All right, let's do it. But we move quiet." They crept out of the cave, sticking to the shadows. Kalia's 4 arms made her a natural. She climbed trees, cut vines, and signaled Jake without missing a beat. He marveled at her multitasking, but kept focus. They reached the edge of the crash site, hiding behind a thick trunk. The raiders were busy, their scanners beeping as they dug into the dirt near the ship. Jake pointed. "See that power cell sticking out of the wreckage? If we overload it, it'll blow. Not big, but enough to scare them off. I'll sneak in, rig it. You set a decoy. Make noise over there." He nodded to the left. Kalia nodded, her hands already moving. One grabbed rocks, another her orb, the third her dagger, and the fourth patted his shoulder. A quick, warm touch. "Be fast, Jake. I'll draw them." She darted off, and Jake took a deep breath. He sprinted low, weaving through the trees, his pilot's agility keeping him silent. The raiders didn't notice as he slipped into the Starbolt's wreckage. The power cell was cracked but intact. He pulled a multi-tool from his belt, hand steady despite the adrenaline. Wires sparked as he crossed them, setting a delay -30 seconds. Enough time to run. A loud crash echoed from Kalia's direction, rocks tumbling, her orb flashing bright. The raiders spun, shouting, and 3 of them charged toward the noise. Jake smirked. "Good job, 4 arms," he muttered, then bolted. He made it halfway back when the cell exploded. A sharp boom shook the ground, sending a wave of heat and light. The raiders yelled, diving for cover as debris rained down. Jake reached Kalia, who was waiting behind a boulder, her dagger ready. "Worked like a charm," she said, grinning. "You're good at breaking things." "Years of practice," Jake shot back. But the victory was short-lived. The 2 remaining raiders stood, dusting off their armor, and one barked into a comm device. Seconds later, another ship roared overhead. Reinforcements. Kalia's face fell. "They're not leaving." "Nope," Jake said, checking his blaster. "And they're mad now. We need a new plan." Kalia scanned the forest with her device. "There's a ravine nearby. Narrow, rocky. We could lose them there, or fight." Jake liked her thinking. "Fight's my style. Let's lead them in, use the terrain. You're fast with those arms. Can you climb?" "Better than you can run," she teased, already moving. They raced toward the ravine, the sound of boots crashing behind them. The narrow gap appeared, walls of stone rising high, dotted with glowing plants. Jake slid in first, Kalia right behind. She scaled the wall with ease, her 4 arms gripping rocks like it was nothing. Jake followed, slower but determined. At the top, they crouched, watching. 4 raiders entered the ravine, weapons raised. Jake whispered, "Got any tricks up your sleeves?" Arms." Kalia's eyes gleamed. "Watch this." She tossed her orb down. It hit the ground and burst into a cloud of glowing mist. The raiders coughed, stumbling, blinded. Jake didn't waste time. He fired his blaster, dropping one. Kalia leaped, dagger flashing, and took out another with a swift strike. Her 4 arms moved like a storm, blocking, striking, throwing rocks, all at once. Jake joined her, tackling the 3rd raider. They wrestled, but Jake's strength won out, pinning the guy. The last raider turned to run, but Kalia's dagger flew, catching his leg. He fell, groaning. Breathing hard, Jake looked at her. "You're full of surprises." "You too," she said, retreating her dagger. "But they'll send more. We can't keep running." Jake nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "Then we stop running. They're after something here, something big. You said your people don't fight. Why not?" Kalia looked away, her hand slowing. "We used to, long ago. But war nearly destroyed us. We swore peace, hid from the galaxy. I'm a healer because that's who we are now." Jake saw the pain in her eyes. "Peace is great, until someone brings the fight to you. These raiders don't care about your oaths. We need to know what they want, Kalia. "If it's on Torah, we can use it against them." She met his gaze, torn but resolute. "You're right. There's something. Stories. Old Vorn tales about a power buried deep. I never believed them. But maybe." A distant rumble cut her off. More ships. Jake grabbed her arm. "We'll figure it out together. Let's move." They climbed out of the ravine, the forest alive with danger and mystery. Jake felt a fire in his chest, human grit mixing with Kalia's strength. Whatever the raiders wanted, they'd face two stubborn souls ready to fight back. The adventure was just heating up. The forest of Torah pulsed with life as Jake and Kalia moved deeper into its glowing heart. The rumble of raider ships faded behind them, but the threat lingered like a shadow. Jake's mind buzzed with questions. Kalia's hint about an old Vorn story had lit a spark. Whatever the raiders were hunting, it was tied to this planet, and he wasn't about to let them take it without a fight. His side ached from the ravine scrap, but he pushed on, matching Kalia's steady pace. Her forearms swung with purpose, guiding them through the maze of purple trees. "We need to talk," Jake said, catching his breath as they paused near a stream. Its water glowed faintly, reflecting the sky's orange hue. "You said something about a power buried here. What's the story?" Kalia knelt by the stream, dipping one hand in to scoop water while another held her scanner, checking for danger. Her gold eyes flicked to him, hesitant. "It's just a tale, something we tell kids. The Vorn don't dig into the past much. We focus on now, on healing." "But you think it's real?" Jake pressed, crouching beside her. "The raiders aren't here for nothing. Tell me." She sighed, her other two hands fidgeting with her dagger and a vine she plucked. "All right. Long ago, before we chose peace, the Vorn were explorers. We found things, strange things, in the stars. One was a crystal, bigger than a ship, glowing with energy. They called it the Heart of Torah. Story says it could power cities, or destroy them. Our ancestors hid it here, deep underground, to keep it safe. Then we forgot it, or tried to." Jake's eyes widened. "A crystal. That's what they're after. Energy like that. It's a weapon or a jackpot. No wonder they're tearing the place apart." Kalia frowned, her forearms crossing in a way that looked almost human. "If it's real, we can't let them have it. But I don't even know where to start looking. It's been centuries." Jake grinned, the kind of grin that meant trouble and a plan. "Good thing you've got me. Humans are great at finding stuff we're not supposed to. You've got stories. I've got ideas. Let's dig it up first." She stared at him, then laughed softly. "You're crazy, Jake. But maybe that's what we need." She stood, brushing dirt off her robe. "There's an old Vorn ruin nearby. If the heart's anywhere, it might be there. Come on." They trekked through the forest, the glowing plants lighting their way. Jake noticed how Kalia moved, sure-footed, her forearms always busy, scanning, cutting vines, holding tools. She was a healer, sure, but there was a fighter in her too, buried under that calm exterior. He liked that. It reminded him of home, of humans who rose up when pushed. The ruin emerged from the trees like a ghost, a crumbling stone dome, half sunk into the earth, covered in glowing moss. Strange symbols curved along its walls, worn but beautiful. Kalia ran a hand over them, her face softening. This was a temple once, before the peace. Jake stepped inside, his boots echoing on the cracked floor. Dust floated in the air, catching the light from Kalia's orb. "Looks empty, but if your people hid something, it's not gonna be obvious. Check for hollow spots. Secret doors, maybe." Kalia nodded, her forearms splitting the work. One tapped the walls, listening for echoes, while another scanned with her device. The third brushed debris aside, and the fourth stayed ready with her dagger. Jake grabbed a loose stone and started prying at the floor, his pilot's hands used to tinkering. Minutes passed, tense and quiet, until Kalia gasped. "Here," she called, pointing to a wall. Her scanner beeped fast. It's hollow. Something's behind it. Jake joined her, peering at the spot. Let's crack it open. He wedged his stone into a seam and pushed, muscles straining. Kalia added 2 hands, her strength surprising him. The wall groaned, then slid aside, revealing a dark tunnel sloping down. Cool air rushed out, carrying a faint hum, like a heartbeat. That's creepy, Jake said, but his grin widened. And awesome. You first, 4 arms. Kalia smirked, stepping in. Scared 2 arms. She led the way, her orb lighting the path. The tunnel twisted, its walls smooth and carved with more symbols. The hum grew louder, vibrating in Jake's chest. At the end, they found it. A chamber, vast and round, with a crystal in the center. It was huge, taller than Jake, glowing blue-green like a trapped star. Energy pulsed from it, making the air crackle. The heart of Torah, Kalia whispered, her voice awed. It's real. Jake circled it, eyes gleaming. Look at that thing. It's alive, almost. Could power a fleet, or blow one up. No wonder the raiders want it. Kalia's face hardened. We hid it for a reason. Jake. This kind of power, it's why we stopped fighting. It destroys more than it builds. Maybe, Jake said, touching the crystal. It was warm, buzzing under his fingers. But it's also a chance. We could use it, fight back, protect Torah. You can't hide forever. Before Kalia could argue, a rumble shook the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the distant sound of engines roared closer. Jake cursed. They're here. Must have tracked us. Kalia's 4 arms tensed, each grabbing something. Orb, scanner, dagger, and a piece of rubble. They'll tear this place apart to get it. Not if we're smart, Jake said, scanning the room. This thing's got energy, right? Let's use it. Can you figure out how it works? Kalia hesitated, then nodded. Maybe. Vorntech is old, but I've studied healing tools. This might be similar. She approached the crystal, her hands moving fast, probing, testing, scanning. Jake watched, amazed at her speed. One hand adjusted the scanner. Another pressed the crystal surface. A third held the orb for light, and the fourth kept her dagger ready. It's alive, she said after a moment. Like a battery, but thinking. I can wake it up, tap its power. What's your plan? Jake pointed to the tunnel. We lure them in, then hit them with a pulse. Knock them out, not kill them. You said you don't fight. Let's keep it that way, but make them regret coming. Kalia smiled, a mix of nerves and excitement. You're clever, Jake. All right, let's try. She pressed all 4 hands to the crystal, whispering words Jake didn't understand. Old Vorn, maybe. The crystal flared, light surging through it. Jake felt the hum in his bones. Now, Kalia shouted, and a wave of energy shot up the tunnel. It wasn't loud, just a ripple, but the air twisted with it. Outside, shouts turned to groans as raiders dropped, stunned. Jake peeked out, 6 of them, sprawled in the dirt, weapons scattered. It worked. He laughed, clapping Kalia's shoulder. You're a genius. You too, she said, breathing hard. But more will come. This isn't over. Jake nodded, staring at the crystal. Then we take it with us. Hide it again, or use it. Your call, Kalia. I'm with you. She looked at him, gold eyes searching his face. You're not like us, Jake. You run toward danger. But I trust you. Let's move it. Together. They rigged a sling from vines and Jake's flight suit straps, hauling the crystal out of the chamber. It was heavy, but Jake's stubbornness and Kalia's 4 arms made it work. As they slipped back into the forest, the sky darkened with more ships. The raiders weren't giving up, and now Jake and Kalia held the prize. Whatever came next, they'd face it side by side. Human grit and Vorn wisdom against the galaxy. The forest of Tora trembled as Jake and Kalia hauled the heart of Tora through the glowing trees. The crystal's blue-green light pulsed in their makeshift sling, casting eerie shadows on the purple leaves. Jake's muscles burned, his hands raw from the vines, but he gritted his teeth and kept moving. Kalia's 4 arms worked tirelessly, one steadying the crystal, another scanning for raiders, a third cutting through undergrowth, and the fourth gripping her dagger. Above them, the sky churned with the growl of raider ships, their dark shapes circling like vultures. "We can't outrun them forever," Jake said, wiping sweat from his brow. "They'll find us. And this thing." He nodded at the crystal, its hum vibrating through his chest. Kalia's gold eyes narrowed, scanning the horizon. "There's a clearing ahead, an old Vorn outpost. It's got walls, some defenses. We can make a stand there." Jake grinned, despite the odds. "A stand, huh? I like it. Let's give them a fight they won't forget." They pushed on, reaching the outpost as the first raider ship touched down nearby. The structure was ancient, its stone walls cracked but sturdy, dotted with strange metal tubes Jake guessed were old weapons. Kalia set the crystal in the center, her hands flying. 2 securing it, 1 activating her scanner, and the 4th tracing symbols on the walls. "These are energy conduits," she said. "If we link the heart to them, we can power the defenses." "Do it," Jake said, checking his blaster. "I'll buy us time." He climbed a broken tower, peering out. 3 ships had landed, disgorging a dozen raiders, tough, armored figures with heavy guns. One stood out, taller, wearing a spiked helmet. The leader, Jake figured. He aimed his blaster and fired a warning shot, kicking up dirt near their feet. They scattered, shouting, giving Kalia a few more seconds. "It's working," Kalia called. The crystal flared, and a low hum spread through the outpost. The metal tubes glowed, sparking to life. Jake ducked as a raider shot back, the blast sizzling past his head. "Any day now, Kalia." "Hold on," she shouted. Her 4 arms moved like a blur, one pressing the crystal, another twisting a conduit, the third holding her orb for light, and the 4th slamming a panel shut. A pulse shot out from the tubes, a wave of blue energy that knocked half the raiders flat. The rest froze, stunned. Jake whooped. "That's it. You're amazing." He leaped down, joining her. "Can it do more?" Kalia nodded, breathless. "It's strong, stronger than I thought. We can push them back. But we need to aim it." "On it," Jake said. He grabbed a loose conduit pipe, rigging it with his multi-tool to point at the raiders. "You power it. I'll steer." They worked together, Kalia channeling the crystal's energy, Jake aiming the blast. Another wave roared out, scattering the raiders further. The leader barked orders, rallying them, but Jake saw fear in their movements now. "They're shaken," he said. "We've got a shot. What else can this place do?" Kalia scanned the walls, her scanner beeping. "There's a shield, old Vorn tech. If I boost the heart, it might work." She pressed all 4 hands to the crystal, whispering again in that strange language. The air shimmered, and a faint dome flickered over the outpost, weak but growing. Raider shots hit it, crackling harmlessly. Jake laughed. "You're full of tricks, 4 arms. Let's finish this." The leader charged, a hulking figure with a plasma rifle. He fired, testing the shield. It held, but flickered. Jake ducked behind a wall, motioning Kalia. "He's the key. Take him out. The rest run." Kalia nodded, her dagger flashing in one hand. Together, she leaped from cover, her 4 arms a whirlwind, orb blinding the leader, dagger slashing his gun, 2 hands shoving him back. Jake followed, tackling the guy low. They hit the ground hard, wrestling. The leader was strong, but Jake was stubborn. He pinned an arm, slamming his blaster butt into the helmet. It cracked, and the leader slumped out cold. The other raiders froze, then bolted for their ships as the shield strengthened. Engines roared as they fled, tails between their legs. Jake stood, panting, and grinned at Kalia. "We did it." She smiled back, her forearms relaxing. "You did it, Jake. I just helped." "Nah," he said, clapping her shoulder. "We're a team. Human grit, born smarts." They didn't stand a chance. They returned to the crystal, its glow steady now. The outpost hummed with life, a testament to their victory. Kalia sat, catching her breath. "What now? We can't keep this here. They'll come back." Jake looked at the sky, then at her. "We hide it again. Better this time. Or we use it. Build something. Protect Torah. Your people don't fight, but maybe it's time they had a choice." Kalia's eyes softened. "You're right. Peace is worth defending. I never thought I'd say that, but you make me see things differently. And you make me think bigger," Jake said. "This crystal, it's not just power. It's a chance. For Torah. For us." They sat in silence, the weight of their words settling. The forest whispered around them, alive with possibility. Jake felt a pull, not just to fix his ship and leave, but to stay, to explore this with Kalia. She seemed to feel it too, one hand resting on his arm, a quiet promise. "We'll figure it out," she said. "Together." "Together," Jake echoed. The raiders were gone. For now. But the galaxy was wide, and trouble never stayed away long. With the heart of Torah in their hands, Jake and Kalia had the power to face anything. And maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something even bigger. As the orange sky darkened, they began planning. Where to hide the crystal, how to rebuild, what came next. Jake's crash on Torah had been an accident, a muscle cramp, a random twist. But it had led him here, to a four-armed healer and a fight worth winning. Humanity's fire burned bright, and with Kalia's strength, it could light up the stars. The story didn't end here. It couldn't. There were more raiders out there, more secrets in Torah's depths, more adventures for a human pilot and a Vorn healer. The heart of Torah pulsed, waiting, and so did they, for whatever came next.